Hey everybody, Brendan here with Common Motor. That's common-motor.com on the internet. And today on our project CT90 or Trail 90, we're going to show you how to replace the fuel lines. However, that means we have to remove the gas tank to do so, which you probably need to do anyway to clean it out. So stay tuned for all the details. There it is. All right, so went ahead and removed the spine cover, the air filter box assembly, and also the brush guard, kind of crash guard here on the bike. Our next step is to take off the muffler, because the muffler is tied to the gas tank and tied to some other pieces that are all in this area that we have to remove in order to get easy access to it. So I'm gonna show you to take off the muffler because there's a few tricks to it. We have two bolts here that hold the muffler, the header pipe to the cylinder head. We have a bolt here hiding in the bottom that holds the muffler to this stud on the gas tank, and we have a bolt back here on the where the shock mounts. So all those have to come off for us to take the muffler off. I'm going to start with this rear one here, and then we'll take off these two, and then we'll take off the one in the middle last. The two nuts that hold the header pipe to the cylinder head tend to be very, very rusty sometimes. So make sure you use some penetrating oil on them and a wire brush to get off that heavy rust because they can break, or they can also back the stud out of the head. It might happen, but take your time, be patient with them. We're gonna go ahead and put a little bit of penetrating oil on them right now. They can come apart. What do you know, these came right off. Wow. Who knew? Now that the muffler's off, we have access to a few things on the right side of the bike. Most importantly, we're going to be getting in behind the battery box here and getting inside the frame to access the things we need to get to. Also, we can access the two bolts on this side that hold the fuel tank on place. This is a weird special bolt stud here that holds the muffler. And there's supposed to be one there, but on our project bike, it is missing. So someone has been here before. There's also two of those on the opposite side that we went ahead and removed a little bit earlier. Let's take this off. Swing the top up and slide out. There it is. We have this tang here that fits into the slot here on the frame. Okay, I'm gonna take the battery out now. I'm gonna go ahead and unhook it. I think this battery is it's a pretty new battery in here. And with the Trail 90 batteries here, they always have this kind of split wire set up with one of them has a fuse. That's your main fuse there on the Trail 90. So there. Pull those off. Take this off. We'll take this bracket off this bolt here. Not all bikes have this bracket here. This is for a flasher relay that clearly is missing. Don't be surprised if your earlier bike does not have that little bracket there. I'm gonna take off this piece of the battery box here. It just has a cotter pin in it because we want to clean it up. You don't have to take it off, but in this case, I want to, just for cleaning, and also so it's easy for you guys to see with the camera. Just take that off of there. Now that we've taken out all the bolts, there's four of them that hold the tank to the frame, we can actually lift the tank up and access the fuel lines. And so I'm just gonna pick it up real gentle. It's a little sticky. And there we are. I'm gonna tilt that forward a little bit. And so I'm gonna tilt that towards the camera so you guys can see a little bit better. We have these two bungs here on the bottom of the tank for the fuel lines. It's important to note that the right side here, this right side tube, right side of the bike, is reserved. So right are reserved, whereas the left side is going to be your regular flow, not reserved. So keep that in mind when you put it together, because as you string the lines through, it can be a bit confusing. I'm going to tie the tank out of the way so it's easier for me to work on, so I don't have to hold it with my hand while removing the fuel lines. Tank is tied up out of the way, and now I can use both my hands to actually maneuver the tank, and it's also not going to fall out of the way. I mean, it's kind of in place, but again, it's easier than me trying to hold it and pull the fuel lines off, because sometimes those lines could be super crispy and hard to remove. Now, if you noticed here, there is no petcock on the bottom of the fuel tank, like some of the other like Hondas that have a tank on the spine. The petcock for the Trail 90 is actually built into the carburetor. And the fuel lines run obviously through the frame, and they run out of the frame here into the carburetor right here. So if you haven't drained the tank yet, the best place to do it is to remove the fuel lines here at the carburetor and drain them. In fact, we did this off camera because this tank had some fuel in it, I should say, and we pinched the lines off. First, remove them, drain them, so then we can remove the tank. If you try to do this with a tank full of gas, you're just gonna make a mess everywhere. So go ahead and drain the tank before you attempt to remove the fuel lines, because the petcock is right here and not up by the tank. So let's remove the fuel lines now. I have no idea how tough they're on there. They look pretty new, like someone had changed these in the recent past. I can tell this is some automotive stuff. Let's see if we can get that to... Grab them with the fuel line pliers here, so we can get them to break loose. No. Yeah. Typical. All right, we're gonna do it the other way. Take my box cutter. I'm just gonna cut a slit in the fuel line. That right there. You should be able to pry them off, since we're gonna be removing them anyway. Nope. Come on. One is on there. Two, all right. And now I can untie the gas tank and take it off. I'm just gonna take it off out of the way because, maybe you need to clean it because it's full of, treasure from the past, AKA crap. All right, here's the fuel tank. Off. We'll put it aside, we'll get this one cleaned, and we'll get it put back on. Let's get the fuel lines unplugged from the carburetor, but we're gonna move these wires out of the way first. This is our points wire, wire that connects the points to ignition coil. This is the connector for the stator coil. Let's get that unplugged and out of the way here, so we can see what's going on with the carburetor. Put that wire back there. Now you guys can kind of see what's happening. So here's our fuel lines. You can just snake that out from there. I come through that hole there. And someone's replaced these in the recent past, but they're not quite the right size, because you can see how on the barb here in the carburetor they didn't quite get them on all the way, because this is some automotive stuff that's been sitting for a long time. Let's see if I can get these off of here with just the pliers. Wiggle. Oh yeah, that one's coming right off. Just like that. One. And two. There's the fuel line we took off of this thing. I can see it's some auto parts store stuff. Actually, it's fuel injector line, which means it's pretty tough. But I'm going to use this at least as a reference to know, hey, my fuel line needs to be at least that long. I'm going to go longer than that but you should make sure, at least if you need to reference it, my fuel line needs to be at least as long as the lines you took out of it. I always go longer. In this case, I think I'm just going to take my fuel line here. I'm going to fold it in half. I'm going to cut it here in the middle, and that should give me plenty of material to work with, because we can always trim it later. Just going to put a little tiny drop of oil on the end of our fuel line here, because it's pretty tough stuff all the way where it's butted up in there. Good. The second one, just the tiniest drop in there. all the way up. The line butts up to the carburetor. So here's something I like to do to make life easier when you are dealing with this, because inevitably you're going to take the carb on off the bike, you might take the fuel tank off, and once these things are routed, it's hard to know which one is the reserve and which one's regular. From the point of view you guys see right now, this upper one is our regular flow, and the lower bottom one is going to be reserve. So I make myself a little tag. I'm using just a colored zip tie here. I'm going to use the red for reserve, and it's literally just more of a visual cue for me. And I'm going to use the green one for regular flow, and that way if I unplug things I know which one to go where. Don't forget, they're not even tight, they're just on there as a sign. And that's my own, again, this is something I do as a personal thing. You do what you want, but at least being able to know which one's which makes life easier sometimes when you're messing with the line. So I'll do that. Okay, let's run the lines into the frame here. Starting with that reserve line, figure out where it is, and it's going to come out of that right side hole. Again, right, red, right, like we're trying to keep all that stuff the same. We'll do the other one here, feed it through. Find it here, where are you at? There we are. Here. So I always like to start with the fuel lines of the carburetor, because I can trim them where they terminate up here at the tank later. And we're probably going to go a little bit longer again, because anytime you take the fuel lines on and off, you're probably going to have to cut a little segment off and then thread it on, so the lines will get shorter as you use them. So running them a bit long is going to be in your favor, but that's where I'm happy with them on the carburetor, and we'll get the tank hooked up here in just a minute. What we want to do next is figure out how long to leave the fuel lines. Obviously they're a little bit long right now. I want to make sure I leave them long enough so in case I have to remove the tank or remove the carb and shorten the lines, I can cut a little bit off the line, reinstall it, and not worry about having to change the whole, like both lines out in real time. So right now I have the lines kind of pulled tight, and our tank is going to sit a little bit lower here because it does drop into the two holes here. So I want to kind of find a happy medium where I have enough line for extra, but not so much line that it becomes like a knot or a bundle inside the battery chamber here. So, and we can kind of play with how much is on the outside of the carbs here. Probably something like that is good, maybe around there. And if I push down on the lines too far here, you'll see it in the chamber, like, see, that tends to be too much line inside of there. So we're probably looking for something around, you can do this with just one line because they're going to be about the same. Probably something around there. So I might I'll cut about that much off the line, test fit it, and see where we are. I'll cut the same amount off the other line too. So I'd rather be a little conservative with it than aggressive with it. All right, measure twice, cut once, right? Right there. Get my tank in place. I'm gonna go ahead and retie it. So again, I don't have to hold it and try to install the lines. I can just put it out of the way here. Because the other thing you want to keep in mind is you might need to do this to the tank, tilt the tank up out of the way to do some service. Let's say you're changing the coil, or you're trying to have to do some work where you don't want to remove the tank, but you need to at least get the tank moved out of the way. So this is a good technique. So you can do that, and you want to make sure the lines are long enough so you can tilt the tank without having a problem here, like that. So now our tank is stable and out of the way. Before I put the fuel line on, I know that this stuff is tenacious and it's tough to get on, so I'm going to put a little drop of Marvel Mystery Oil on the barbs here, because this fuel line is tough to install. the way it is, and also I'm gonna put a little drop on here. It's not gonna come off. Like, these things grip so much, and the gas will wash away that oil here eventually. All right, let's see if we can get this on without too much of a fight. This stuff is pretty tenacious. That's pretty good. It's super tough. It's not going to go on anymore. I have to call it quits there. It does not want to go on anymore. All right, a few lines on. You know, if you want to put clamps on it, put clamps on it, depending on what you're using. But you know, our poly pipe is tough stuff, and so I'm not worried about it letting go. All right, the tank kind of lined up in place. There we go. Right there. All right, I'm gonna pull some of this out a little bit right here. So I have a little bit of extra out in the engine here, and then I'm gonna put a zip tie around it because I like to keep things bundled so they don't go anywhere. Just a little bit of tension on it right there. Kind of personal preference. So we got a little bit of extra line here outside. I'll check the carbs. That should be more than plenty for feeding the carbs and having to shorten it if we need to. We got our CT90 put back together, gas tank on, muffler on, all the accessories, and we should be good to go. We wanted to show you this video because, as you saw, there's a lot of pieces that have to come off the bike in order to remove the tank. It's not as easy as some other bikes where it just pops off 1, 2, 3. And being aware of what it takes to remove the tank is important for any kind of service cleaning, changing the lines like we just did, or anything else you might have to access underneath the tank. Let's say changing the ignition coil or accessing other parts inside the frame body here. With that, this is Brendan with Common Motor, common-motor.com. On the internet, make sure you follow us on social media. That's on Instagram and Facebook. Subscribe to our newsletter via our website, and of course, subscribe to this YouTube channel down below. Ring the bell for notifications, and we'll see you next time.